Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Devil's Advocate Trades Edition. However, part of our segment, which is Hard Hats and Hard Truth. So, as I said yesterday, this is going to be an interesting one. So let's talk about it. I posed a question out to the socials, and one did not disappoint. Thank you, TikTok. Women in construction, what's your experience been like? So I got a whole bunch of information on that one, and men and women came into that chat. Now, I did post one for men as well. One guy did respond. We are going to talk about that in the next episode. I thought it was a great response personally, but people do what they want. Right? Everyone decides to go into the women's comments and have a chat. So here's what I'm going to tell you that I did notice. I did notice that there was both positive and I guess I'll say conflicting responses. Some are, the known culprits, which are like porta potties. But there were some women that came in and said, you know what, they've never had a problem. It's always been good. They prefer working with men. And that's nice to hear, right? You don't hear it as often, but when you do hear it, you got to acknowledge it. We also had men come into the comments and say some really nice things, worked with females. They're great. Some of the hardest workers we know can run circles around a lot of us. Always had a great experience working alongside a female. Don't have any issues. So those are great things to hear about because you want some positive feedback. You don't want everyone to come in with 500 problems, because the whole reason that we're doing this segment is to have the hard truths about some of the things that are going on the sites that maybe we can, provide some perspective on. Okay. Whether it be male or female. So we're going to do one that's going to kind of, I'm going to jump into a comment that came in. They're going to be anonymous to you, not to me. I know who they are, as in I can see who wrote it. But I'm going to read it out what their comment is, and we're going to talk about it from both a male and female perspective. Okay, so this one is from a female, and this is what she says. I entered the trades in 2010. I worked hard and kept under the radar. I didn't complain about the drywallers drilling new holes in the side of the porta potty every morning, or the tin bashers talking on the other side of the wall of how it would be fun to drug me and fuck me. I'm now an electrical superintendent running a 10 million plus contract, and the guys respect me. So that's a very conflicting comment, and I'm going to tell you why, in case it's not obvious. First of all, congratulations to this wonderful lady who is now the electrical superintendent, and she is working on 10 million plus contracts. That is an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations to you. What I am going to say is, what the fucking absolute bullshit hell was that you had to endure to now get to this? And this is not, this is very conflicting for me, because I'm like, no, you should not have to endure this type of bullshit to be successful inside of industry, not male or female. So there's two sides of this coin for male and female, okay? On one hand, I've seen people drill holes inside of a porta potty. I know that it's something that exists. I'm also very feisty, and especially considering that I'm someone who gets to run sites, I get after people, and I also tell the porta potty people, like, I have cameras on my sites. I always have them usually install cameras so we can see who's defacing property, because those porta potties do not belong to the company normally. They're normally brought in by a porta potty company, which means that someone's going to have to pay that company for destroying and defacing their property. And that's usually their punishment, along with a nice, wonderful write-up. And then letting them know that they are bordering on sexual harassment. And if they'd like to continue with this, then I'm more than happy to store them to the door and, put a human rights order on them for violence and harassment. And usually most people don't do stuff like that. But that's me. That's my site. That's not every site. So with this being said, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, okay? Porta potties should be separate, okay? And let's talk about why. If you actually look at the newer and more latest job hazard assessments, or in-field assessments, you're going to see that there are 4 elements, okay? So there's physical hazards, chemical hazards, biological hazards, and psychological hazards. And then under each one of those hazards, they're going to have, so we're going to start with biological, because that's kind of where I'm headed. So we've got viruses, bacteria, mold and fungi, asbestos, bodily fluids, sewage, and animal waste. So those are some of the things that come on I created this one as a safety specialist. And you can call it specialist. I'm just a safety person. Yay, safety. So it falls under safety. Okay. People will say, well, then nobody should be sharing porta potties. But no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, when it comes to the physiology of male and female, women bleed. So that's a pathogen. Women also need to be able to sit, because that's what we do. We sit. Okay. Nobody is looking to squat. I'm going to tell you that as a female, I've had to squat before. It's not fun. Your legs burn. Sometimes you pee on yourself. It's not a good time. So, I'm going to go with no. We want to be able to sit down on the porta potty, know that it's, not an absolute disaster. And we want to have some sort of cleanliness and hygiene, because we have to pay attention to that as women, being that all of our parts are kind of just accessible to all of those pathogens and all of those other things. So we don't want males in there being, kind of gross. And we also take into consideration, if we're on our period, what's happening with that, right? And so I don't have a problem sitting in a porta potty, because I find that female porta potties don't, and this is just my experience, they don't get dirty as quickly as a male's. So there's a lot of space between, the bottom and the top of the porta potty as to what, like, when it's coming up. It sounds gross, but we're just going to have this conversation. I find that female porta potties tend to stay a lot lower. I don't know a lot of women that actually, drop a deuce, and I'm not saying they don't, but a lot of women don't drop a deuce. They're usually peeing, or they're on their period and they have to change their tampons and whatnot in their pads, and that all goes in there. So usually a lot of porta potties will also have the little side, like, for when they know it's for women, they usually will have like the little side trash can for them to put all of their napkins and whatnot in. We say napkins because it's, politically correct, but it's just pads and tampons. So, but why would you want to be in there anyways, male? And there was a few males that came into the comment section and made the comment. They were like, yeah, they're gross. I don't even blame a female for not wanting to be in there. I don't even want to be in there. So that's another aspect, right? So that in itself is not a good thing. So the porta potty thing, not cool. Why drilling fucking holes? You're defacing property. You could be charged for the said property that you're defacing, or for vandalism, and also for sexual harassment, because that falls under the scope of sexual harassment, whether you're male or female. Why are you drilling holes? Why are you trying to, see what's going on with people's bits? It's none of your business. So there's that. Next, we're going to talk about the tin bashers on the other side of the wall making comments. Have I heard people say this on site myself? Yeah, I've heard people talk about, wanting to sleep with people, or, they take a run at them or whatever. I've heard all that. But the other part of that is 100% not acceptable. The fact that she had to go through that is absolutely disgusting. I don't know how long she had to go through that. I don't know when she ended up in her superintendent role. So we're talking at least a decade of bullshit, of dealing with people that are talking like that. These are things that go on. So for those of you that are like, whatever, the guys are just fucking jaw. No, that's not something you joke about. It's not something you joke about. Like, what happens if you've got a bunch of guys that are like, oh, that guy's a pussy. We're gonna, we're gonna drug him and rape him too. Like, are you guys gonna be on the same page? You guys are all gonna be like, oh, well, that doesn't happen. It does happen. All these things happen both to male and female, except females tend to be the target because they think that females won't fight back. A lot of them, we don't have the physical strength to fight let alone fucking 6 males off of us. So that's why women will bring things or utilize things that can be used as weapons. So not okay. Like, it's an absolute disgusting thing to even hear, that she had to endure hearing that type of shit, which means she's probably going to make sure she's not alone anywhere. She's always going to have some sort of ally where a person she knows will either speak up to them or will, cut her, be like, hey, you know what? I don't really need you here right now. Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of males that if they hear that, and they don't want to report it because they don't want the drama of that, which we're going to get into, or they don't want anything to happen, they're just going to cut her. They're going to be like, hey, you know what? I need some help over on this side. Like, just come over here. Or, you know what? Hey, I heard so-and-so in the other building or so-and-so on the other side need some help. Can you maybe just like head over there? They're going to take them out of the situation. Is what they're going to do. They remove the threat by taking them out of the situation. Is that the right way to handle it? Some people would say no, but I would say in a certain situation, yeah, you know what? I'd rather be taken out of the situation and removed from it than for something to possibly happen and just be like, well, I shouldn't have to leave because they're assholes. Like, that's where I say to people, be smart about this. If me cutting that side, like if I need to cut out of over there and go somewhere else to be safe, I'm going to do that. right? So I'm going to be like, yeah, cool. I'll head over there. Thanks for letting me know. And then I'll just walk away. It's not a big deal. You know, they always say, use your words, you know. So I'll walk away. Now, will I get feisty about some things? There are certain things I will. Like, I mean, I tell everybody that I'm a feisty character, but I'm also not an idiot. So I'm not going to say things to people where I'm backed into a room. There's no way out of it. I don't have the upper hand in that situation. I'll probably get quiet and try and cut myself out of that situation so that I can go and get, I don't know, backup, or, you know, people that will go in there and listen. Cause I might send one of my, like someone that's above me, a client, like even my clients, I'll be like, you need to go into that room, say nothing, just go into that room and listen to what they're saying. And they will say something. They'll be like, not cool. We don't want you on here. Or they'll come back to me and be like, cut them, get them off this site. They are 100% a liability, because you are a liability when you do things like that to your owner, to the clients that are on site. You are a liability. So you shouldn't be there. Now let's talk about the coin for males. If you have males that are listening to this type of bullshit go on, if you have males that hear it, that are beside the person that's saying it, there are three things that I pay attention to with a male when it comes to that. So some males will just laugh. Some males will jump into the conversation, and some will say nothing. And their nothing is usually absolute silence, or it's the And when a man goes, that's his way of saying noted. And that notation in him can be anything from you're a piece of shit to I don't want to work with you. It's just noted. Okay. So that's what you're going to pay attention to. And a lot of those men want to probably knock that guy out. But here's the catch. That guy is a golden boy in some way. He's either known by the client and was recommended by the client or by the boss. He's so far up the boss's ass, you don't know where one starts and one ends. Or you've got some sort of nepotism going on where there's a relation somewhere in the company or on the job site where now this person becomes what we call untouchable. So males have other things to deal with too. Not only could they lose their job, they could be threatened, they could be ganged up on, they could be jumped. Those are all real things that happen. So when I sit here and I talk about how we can't divide the sexes, we can't, because for every male that probably wanted to come forward that may have witnessed that, they're sitting there going, shit, I'm going to lose my job. Not only am I going to lose my job, but now I'm looked at as a rat. Then it's going to go around the fucking field, because honestly, industry, like my city isn't that big. So people are going to talk, and then I'm not going to be able to get a job. So how do I handle this? You know what? I'm just going to tell her, come with me. We're going to go over here and do this. And then I'm going to make sure she's by me so that nothing happens. And then they're just going to leave her alone, and she's going to know she has an ally. And people will say, oh, well, that's doing nothing. And I agree that it's doing nothing at the point that you should be escalating this somewhere else. But I'm also going to say that it is protecting her. And it is letting her know she has an ally that's heard that shit, that doesn't agree with it, and that is going to try and put her in a situation where she's safe. Okay? So that's step number one. And I'm not opposed to it. But do I think it needs to be escalated? 100%. That's when you're calling in your OH&S or your OSHA. That's when you're calling a lawyer. That's when you're calling maybe the owner of the company has no relations and doesn't know what the hell's going on the site. That's maybe when you call the bonds people that are, bonding the whole project. That's maybe when you start making those phone calls, because that is a liability. And when you start showing that there's liabilities, your WCBs or your insurances, when they know that there's a liability on site that can come back and bite them in the ass, they are going to be on there so fast people's heads will spin. So that's where I say escalate it. Don't run to HR, because we all know HR hasn't done. There's some people in their HR field that do a great job. But guess what? HR can only do so much too. So I'm going to protect some of the HR people out there. I have a background in HR. And there are some that are really good at their job. But here's the thing. If they are part of the company, as in they are hired by the company, that means the owner can walk into their office and pull files at any time and read personal files at any time. Okay. They own the business. They own the documents. They own the files. Here's the other part of that. You own your personal file. So whenever you leave a company, you can ask for your personal file. They technically have to give it to you because it's your information. They're not allowed to keep your personal file. They want to keep the write-ups that they did about you. Go ahead and keep the write-ups they want to do about you. But all of the other information, tax stuff, information about you, you can keep that. That is yours. And whenever someone asked me for their personal file, I would give it to them. So this comment stuck out to me. There's a lot more that we're going to go through, but this comment really stuck out to me. So at the end of the day, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is a great comment to talk about. I'm going to keep pushing out these questions to you guys. Thank you for everybody on TikTok that jumped in on this. I've got over 100 responses on it. It keeps growing. I'm going to keep asking questions, and I want all of you to keep asking questions. That's going to wrap up our segment for today. We're going to jump into a few more questions next round. And I think we're just going to keep going on this because I think it's a good thing to talk about how men and women are both affected by a similar situation and how it's different, but it's still a problem. So I want us to stop attacking each other and start to embrace and see the other side of it. Yes, there's assholes everywhere. There's women that are assholes, which we're going to talk about in the next segment. And then there's also men that are assholes, which we know and we just talked about now. Moving forward, I want everybody to, you know, keep your head up. Women, keep your head on a swivel. If something doesn't seem right, make sure you have an out. Make sure you always have an out. And if you don't want to work at that job because you feel like you keep being placed in unsafe positions, do it. Leave the job and find something else. Trust me, there's another job out there that will pay you what you're worth and will give you the environment you require and deserve. Anyways, that's it. That's it for me. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have an awesome week.